I'm not teaching, I am publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in UK test part 134. Winston Churchill, why doing leg stretching, and if you participate in the leg stretching, that is at your own risk. And also the subject is probably about the Second World War. So Winston Churchill, we're having a picture, and a description to the picture. I don't know really where I should start to read. And then more what we should know for the Life in UK test. So we're just starting here with Winston Churchill. He lived from 1874 until 1965. We're doing leg stretching here. So we're having the soles of the feet together, and we're sitting tall and straight, and we're leaning a bit in front. So Winston Churchill, 1874 1965. Churchill was the son of a politician and, before becoming a Conservative MP, and we know it already, these are members of parliament. Conservative MP in 1900 was a soldier and journalist. So Winston Churchill, he was the son, born in 1874, to a politician, and before he became a member of parliament, a Conservative member of parliament in 1900, he was a soldier and a journalist. And we're having a picture. I'm going to show it in a moment closer. In May 1940, he became Prime Minister. So in May 1940, we know that from June 1940 until June 1941, Britain was, and the British Empire was fighting almost alone against the Axis. He became in 1940 Prime Minister. We know of Sir Robert Walpole that he became in 1721 Prime Minister, and we know that Wellington became Prime Minister after the Battle of Waterloo in 1850. And on the next exercise, sitting tall up, we are flexing foot, and we are having the toes together, and we are leaning in front. He became Prime Minister. He, of course, refused to surrender to the Nazis and was an inspirational leader to the British people in a time of great hardship. So he did, of course, not surrender Britain to Germany or to Nazi Germany, and was an inspirational leader. So the people were inspired by his, we get a few quotes here already, inspired by his leadership, and during the time where Britain was bombed through the Blitz very often, and many British soldiers died, and also the whole situation was problematic. The living conditions got problematic because of the war. He lost the general election in 1945, but returned as Prime Minister in 1951. So in 1945, the year when the Second World War ended, he lost the general election, but when he returned as a Prime Minister in 1951. Now, we haven't told us who's voted like what, if a Prime Minister is voted or not. He lost the general election in 1945, but he returned 6 years later in 1951. I don't think we want to know that for the test. And now the legs a bit more apart, straight at the back, and leaning again in front. He was an MP, we know already that he was a member of parliament for the Conservatives in 1900, until he stood down at the general election in 1964. So he was an MP, he was member of parliament until 1964. Then, following his death in 1965, he was given a state funeral. He became a state funeral, so it is a very big funeral. It's not a private funeral just with family and a few friends. It is a state funeral. It's a big funeral. He remains a much admired figure to this day, and in 2002 was voted the greatest Briton of all time by the public. So he's a much admired, so many people look up to him and like what he did, and see him still as an inspirational figure. And in 2002 there was a questioning, a survey, and he was voted the greatest Briton of all time in Britain by the public. We're going to the next exercise. We're going into the 90-90 position with the legs, so both legs having 90 degrees. We're going with the hands to the knee which is behind us, and we're leaning in front with the shoulder to the knee which is in front of us. During the war, he made many famous speeches, including lines which you may still hear. So he was giving speeches, so he was talking about something, but the speech is then actually made that it has a beginning and an end and a middle part. It has structure. So that is a speech basically. And he gave speeches, and a speech sometimes has some sentences in it, and they can be picked out, and then they can be quoted. And one line which he said in one of his speeches was, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." So he said at one part that he has nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. So that he actually, I need a bit of context, but I interpreted now, if I take the context that I believe it is, we're changing the position, that it means that he will not basically surrender to Germany or anything, begann with Heinz Stefaniewicz Manifesto leaning in front, and that he will not make any, I don't know what to call it, associations, but he will not agree to anything. The only thing which he will offer is blood, which means that he fights until death, or that he will fight hard. Toil, that means that he will work with, or no matter how hard basically the working becomes, with tears. That's a bit harder to explain. That means, I guess, that even if there are tragically people dying, he will still only offer the tears and not make any, I think it's called successions, and sweat. That's basically because people sweat when they are working physically hard. So he said, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, sweat, and tears." And now going back into the other side, into the 99 position, and the leaning in front. So one of his quotes is, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." And I interpret it as, I don't have a context, but I interpret it as that he says, we will not surrender to anything. All we're giving is blood, toil, tears, and sweat, which basically means we will fight. And that is basically the second thing which we're quoting here. Churchill's first speech to the House of Commons after he became Prime Minister in 1940. So he became Prime Minister in 1940, and in his first speech to the House of Commons, you already know it, House of Lords, House of Commons, and the Parliament, he said, but I think he said more than just that, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." So, and what it means, and now we're going into the pigeon pose, only if you know how to do it and without injuring yourself also. We shall fight on the beaches, that means they're going to fight, maybe he's referring to Dunkirk. I don't know what it means. Or it just means we will fight everywhere, because he lists on the landing grounds, fields, streets, says we will fight the Germans everywhere. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds. I don't actually know where it is. Maybe that means the airfield. And we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. That means that the British troops and the British, he doesn't only mean the British soldiers, but the whole Britain as a country will fight the Germans everywhere. And I think it also means that they will not hide out, that they will fight Germany everywhere. I don't know. And that they will never surrender, so that they will never give up. Speech to the House of Commons after Dunkirk is see above, 1940. Churchill's first speech in the House of Commons after he became Prime Minister in 1940. Speech to the House of Commons after... so that was with the beaches, was not meant to Dunkirk, because speech to the House of Commons after Dunkirk. So after Dunkirk he made a speech in where he mentioned, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much out by so many to so few." I thought that was about the Battle of Britain, that quote. And I was pretty sure that quote he was referring to the Royal Air Force. That the few Royal Air Force pilots had defended so much Britain, that so many people, that whole the country of Britain has so much to thank for the people who were fighting in the Royal Air Force planes. But he was saying that is after Dunkirk. Never in the field of human conflict was so much out by so many to so few. Maybe I have them all read wrong. And he said that about the Battle of Britain. And we're going over to the other side, first into 1990, and we're leaning in front. So it's a bit complicated to understand. He made many famous speeches, including lines which you may still hear. "I have nothing to offer, but..." I was already wondering why would he start with a speech with it. So I think it's now like that. We're just saying he made many famous lines. For example, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat. And that was from his first speech in the House of Commons. And then after the Battle of Dunkirk, so it was referred to Dunkirk, he said, we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight on the hills, we shall never surrender. That was after Dunkirk. And then he said to the House of Commons during the Battle of Britain, never in the field of human conflict was so much out by so many to so few. So the we shall fight on the beaches was referred to the Dunkirk beach, and the never in the field of human conflict was so much out by so many to so few, that is referred to the pilots of the Royal Air Force. But it would also fit to the other thing where the fishers and the civilians were rescuing the 300,000 from the beaches. But the relationship fits better to the air battle of Britain. We're going now into the pigeon pose, if you know how to do it without injuring yourself. Because I don't know how many, but it can be hundreds, maybe thousands of fishing boats, and these were small civilian boats, I don't know, but they could take only 5, 6, 7 people per trip. Whereas here, I don't know half the numbers, but I think it were just 200 or so pilots, and they're defending, I don't know, a population of 40 million or something like that in the 1940s. So, I was already wondering why he would say in his first speech, but in his first speech, he said, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat. So it wasn't mentioned to Germany, but to the parliament. And that means that I still don't have a context, but that he maybe does not have anything, whatever, but he will do everything. He will work until he sweats. He will work even under tears, he will toil, and he will work even if it comes to the occasion that he loses blood. And then he said after the Battle of Dunkirk that we will fight the Germans everywhere. We shall never surrender, because the evacuation of Dunkirk was a retreat. And France has fallen and was retreat. But he says, no, we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight on the hills, we shall never surrender. And then he said about the Battle of Britain, never in the field of human conflict was so much out by so many to so few. That so many people in Britain out for the pilots of the Royal Air Force and the Spitfires and Hurricanes that they defended Britain. With that we're through with Winston Churchill, and we are also through with the stretching. We're just putting the soles of the feet together, and we're sitting tall up, and we're ending with the butterfly stretch. Now we have written a few points here. Now I have a short photo. Winston Churchill, best known for his leadership of the UK during the Second World War. So this is Winston Churchill. I'm going to show it later. Winston Churchill, and he's best known for his leadership of the United Kingdom during the Second World War. You may be asked to identify famous quotes from speeches by people such as Churchill. Make sure you know who said what. So we should also learn Shakespeare. All the words stage, as you like it, to be or not to be, Hamlet, once more upon the rose or something like that. A rose by any other name, wrote of Romeo and Juliet, and once more unto the breaches. I still don't know what breaches or breach. Once more onto the breach. That is out of Henry V. And we had one more. And yes, it was the Darling Buds of May, also not 80, shall I compare it to a summer's day. People said what quotes from speeches by people such as Churchill. Make sure you know who said what. We don't want to know when, about what. So Churchill said in his first speech to the House of Commons, I have nothing to offer. So he was addressing the people, the members of parliament, and not the Germans. I have nothing to offer, but everything. Basically, my blood, my toil, my tears and sweat. Or he also means that not just but for the British people. But that the British people are willing to never surrender, and that they have spirit, and that they will fight on forever. That they will never surrender. And when he said after the Battle of Dunkirk, we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight on the hills, we shall never surrender. And he said, during the Battle of Britain, never in the field of human conflict was so much out by so many to so few. And with that, I thank you very much, and until the next time.